Welcome back to the lab with your host, Brad Bolt. Welcome back to the lab. Back to the lab. Welcome back to the lab. Back to the lab.
Welcome back to another edition of the NFL Lab Network podcast. I'm your host, Brad Bolt, and joined by a couple good friends and a very talented analyst, up-and-coming analyst in the world with us today. We're going to talk a little bit of fantasy football, but introducing first the host of the Saturday Air Raid podcast on the NFL Lab Network, John Roberts. John, how's it going?
I was going to say this is really nice to be able to just like sit back, let someone else introduce the show, navigate it, do all the pivoting. I was just saying, Hutch, before, I've just spoiled the guest. Oh, no. I was just saying before I just come off another pod where I was talking for like 2 hours. So I'm ready to go again, taking a little break. That's a really long-winded way of saying I'm good. Thank you. Thanks, Hutch.
And joining us as well is the co-host of the Saturday Air Raid show as well, the bearded wonder himself, Dan O'Connell. Dan, how's it going?
I'm good, Brad. How are you going tonight, mate?
We are going good and even better because we have one of the brightest young fantasy football analysts on the show tonight. He joins us with part of the Football Guys team and DLFootball, Hutchinson Brown. Hutch, how's it going, mate?
Doing awesome, guys. Thank you. I appreciate you all having me on the show. We're going to talk some Dynasty today, so super excited. It's going to be good, man. It's going to be good.
That we are. Today we're just going to talk about some of our, I guess, not the big name buy or sell sort of guys. So people that you're looking in those middle tiers who you think that you'd be going after because you're projecting big season for them coming up, or I guess the role that they're sort of playing. So we want to pick a few guys who you're looking at buying in all your dynasty leagues and a few guys who you're looking to sell off for either whether it be for rebuilding purposes or if you're trying to sell them off for a better player sort of thing based on their value. So going to kick it off with our guest Hutch. Who's your first buy that you're looking to in Dynasty?
So the first buy I would like to talk about, I am a big fan of this player coming out of college, and I just don't understand why people are dissing him because of the landing spot. I'm going to be talking about Jack Smith-Njigba, wide receiver of the Seattle Seahawks. He recently got drafted in the first round. And there are plenty of people that are fading Jack Smith-Njigba because he landed in Seattle Seahawks. And the Seattle Seahawks obviously isn't the dream landing spot that we were thinking of for him. We were thinking more maybe Green Bay, maybe New England, where he has number one role. There are some other spots where he could have been, the number one wide receiver. We would have liked it better. But Seattle is perfectly fine. I mean, Geno Smith and this offense were really, really great last year. And, we can't expect Geno Smith to repeat what he did last year. But this offense still has a lot of talent and still should be very, very productive. And he's got competition there with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. But we saw Jack Smith-Njigba with Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Troy Fleming. That wide receiver room in 2021, he put up 1,600 plus yards. In 2021, that was his breakout year. That's where he really had that big season. That was with that as his receiving competition. He's going to do just fine in Seattle. And honestly, I truly think he's one of the more talented receivers to come out in a while. And I think there's a very realistic chance that he's the number one wide receiver in this team by year's end. So I think he's being drafted as wide receiver 17 right now in most dynasty drafts. I think that's absolutely ludicrous. I have him ranked as my wide receiver 11 in Dynasty, and I want to move him up, but I just can't. I can't find a name I can put him above. I want to move him up, but he's currently just sitting just behind Chris Olave and T. Higgins at 11, and I'm so excited for him. I think he's way too undervalued because of his landing spot. In Dynasty, you want to trust that talent wins out. Redraft is sometimes hard. Sometimes situation wins for a year or two, but in Dynasty, you always want to trust the talent. And Jack Smith-Njigba, but we know he's a supremely talented player. He's going to earn the target share he deserves.
So just so you know, Hutch, you can probably see John bouncing out of his seat at the moment. He's a Seahawks fan. So you've just started the show off perfectly for him now. He's buzzing now.
Exactly. Took the words out of my mouth. And what I was going to say is, if you want to go higher in him in your dynasty rankings, you can. I've got him at 13 right now, just behind Devonta Smith, and just ahead of Jerry Jeudy, who we'll talk about tomorrow night on my show. But yeah, I'm all over Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think he's going to be one of the best prospects we've seen in a long time. And I know everyone talks about this Ohio State receiving corps like it was a historically great receiving room that were up, especially having CJ Stroud and Justin Fields a few years ago. But I think he's gone as the perfect landing spot. I don't think we need to know too much about Geno. This year we know enough. I understand the Seahawks have got this contract where they can really easily move on from Geno Smith. But I think that the Seahawks are always – I think that recently they've showed that they know what they're doing and they're sitting in the driver's seat. If they bring someone in, I think we can just trust the process. I think that, Tyler Lockett will probably still be kick around a little bit longer just because he's been so solid with his longevity. But eventually it's going to be a really nice receiving room with DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba. Noah Fant is a great, they've got a great list of tight ends who are all going to be able to support each other. And especially, I actually think bringing in Zach Charbonnet is a good thing for the offense, for the receiving corps as well, because if we can get keep these drives alive, and it's going to give so much more opportunity for Jackson Smith-Njigba in the slot, or wherever even he starts to play outside as well.
And I think a lot of people were down this year on the receiving class just because of what we've had in recent years. Like you look at this class we had last year, and that was insane. And then even when you look at Jamar Chase as well and Jefferson. So you look at this year's class, and people were off it just because there wasn't that level that we expected from the years before. So I think that's why JSN's flying a little bit under the radar as well. And like you said, being drafted at wide receiver 17 or whatever. So
that's where he's going.
I think that played into it a lot.
It's a good point. I think we've also just decided as a fantasy community that this year's receivers coming out of this draft just sort of collectively were down on them. And somehow Jackson Smith-Njigba has fallen into that group when really he's actually quite an outlier within the group. Sure, the rest of the guys are a little bit smaller and they're not the usual body types that we're used to seeing or putting up the same measurements and things like that. But I think that he is in this sort of tier above, and then we can get into the rest of the guys as well.
So, Hutch, I have a question for you. With Jackson Smith-Njigba is actually probably the perfect guy for this. So, when you're looking at either buying or selling a player in Dynasty, do you take into account the type of role that they might play? So Jackson Smith-Njigba is predominantly going to be the slot receiver. And, the slot receiver seems to have, now become the key part of an offense sort of thing. So when you're looking at a player like Jackson Smith-Njigba, if he was going to, let's just say it was Arizona drafted him and he was going to be, they were going to try and, so they've come out and said, right, we're going to play him on the outside. Does that change your mindset into, maybe I won't put this guy so high based on that type of role? Or do you look at the team that he goes to, where he's going to fit into that offense, and that determines where you think, right, he's a buy at this number because of that?
I mean, obviously, you want to make sure that your players will be put in the right role that they fit in. Obviously, we've seen it in history that some players are put in roles where they just simply don't belong, and as a result, they don't really succeed. Like we see it all the time in fantasy football. We see it all the time in the NFL. Jackson Smith-Njigba, I think that when I made sure, because people were primarily calling him a slot receiver, and then I went to watch film on him and just see what is he looking like on the outside? Where is he taking the snaps? He took plenty of snaps on the outside, and he looked really good out there. I think he can play both outside and inside. Sure, he's primarily a slot wide receiver, but I think he's fine on the outside. So I think it would have been fine if Arizona was going to put him on the outside for me. But I do like the fact that he's going to be fitting more in the slot in Seattle.
I probably shouldn't mention this, but there was this fantastic clip that was going around Seahawks Twitter a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, of Jackson Smith-Njigba just burning down the sideline with Devin Witherspoon behind him. And it was just, I love that they posted it because they were like, look at how amazing this receiver we've got is. And then within 10 minutes, they're like, oh, but he's burning our other young talent, so let's get it off. But for everyone who saw it, I've probably got it framed and sitting somewhere.
See, I think he's got potential to be the massive target hog in that offense as well. Like you look at DK Metcalf, he's a big play receiver, but JSN's going to be that target monster, I think, as well.
And think about how much Seattle wasn't throwing over the middle of the field with Russell Wilson because they were too busy, throwing deep balls or flats and outs, compared to now when Geno is able to see the field very well. I'm not going to compare it with what Russell Wilson was doing, but I think that, Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be able to eat up so many targets over the middle, on the outside. I think it's a great call.
So we talked about wide receivers. Dan, I think I know. Well, I know one of your guys that you want to talk about as a buy as a wide receiver. So who's your first buy in Dynasty?
Well, I had a few, but I'm looking at Michael Pittman Jr. And a lot of the reason I'm looking at him is because of what value you're going to have to give up to get him. And I don't think you're going to have to give up an awful lot to pick up someone like him at the moment. And then you look at the way I think they're going to start the season with Anthony Richardson, who I think will start week 1. I think they're going to have a slow start to the season. So you look at someone like Michael Pittman Jr., whose value to start the year is going to drop off as well. And I think people that roster him are going to start to lose patience a lot. So I think you can pick him up cheap, and what he can give you for the price you're going to have to pay for him, I'm all over him at the moment.
Hutch, what's your thoughts on Pittman?
Pittman's an interesting one. I really am terrified of Anthony Richardson. I mean, with this guy completed just over 50% of his passes in college, it's kind of really hard to trust a quarterback with that kind of production, and it's hard to trust him to produce fantasy relevant wide receivers. But we know Michael Pittman's a talented player. He's on his contract year, so I wouldn't be surprised if right now if he's valued too low. If we are going to buy him, though, I like what he was saying when he was saying wait till early in the season when Anthony Richardson's a starter if he's going off to a slow start. Because right now he still has a lot of value, but if he gets off to like a slow start in the first 4 or 5 weeks, that's going to plummet his value even more. People are going to get very impatient with him, and that you're going to be able to buy him. Because right now I think you can still get a first out of him. I don't know if you'll be able to get a first out of him if he starts off slow in the first 5 weeks of the season. I think you'll be able to buy him for even less than that. So I'd be in on buy Michael Pittman in the first few weeks of the season, but Either way, I'm terrified. Anthony Richardson is not a quarterback we want for our fantasy wide receivers. Maybe we can develop him. This coaching staff has history. They just a couple of these guys was just with Jalen Hurts a couple of years ago after being able to develop him into his 3rd year as an NFL starter and just be an amazing quarterback. And now look at Jalen Hurts now. I mean, his contract massive. Like, he is one of the better quarterbacks in the entire National Football League, are probably the best quarterback in the entire NFC right now. But Anthony Richardson's going to be a project for them, and it's going to be scary for Michael Pittman Jr. But I agree, buying him early in the season if he's struggling is a good option.
And this is where I come from as well. Like, I'm not looking at this year for Michael Pittman's stats. I'm looking next year and the year after.
Yeah.
And we've spoken a lot between Brad, John, and myself, and a bunch of other Australians as well going through the draft. And yeah, like you said, Anthony Richardson scares me, but the potential of what he can become, I'm willing to take the shot on that. And like you said, Pittman's in his contract year. So even if, I think the Colts re-sign him and want to give him a lot of money to keep him on there because he's a sort of wide receiver you want Richardson to grow with. But if there's a team out there that just chucks an absolute bag at him, he could end up in a perfect spot as well. So and for someone with his size, his talent, I'm definitely willing to take a shot on him during the year to see where his value's at.
He's going wide receiver 23 on Fantasy Pros at the moment in Dynasty. So he's sort of sandwiched between Jerry Jeudy, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Traylon Burks are below him. Jordan Addison just above. That to me, and I know that this is not what you're saying, Dan, but you're making the point that once he falls, he'll be a value. See, because I would rather have all of those guys, I think, in Dynasty over him right now. So that to me is screams sell. And then wait till he sort of starts to fall a bit more before you can scoop him up for the same reasons that Hutch is just saying. The Anthony Richardson factor is a lot. And look, to be honest, I've never really been a Michael Pittman guy, but I'm aware that when you see him on the field, and he's a supreme talent. So you can see why you'd want to get him. it's a tricky one for me right now. I still think that it's a bit rich where he is.
Yeah, he's
At the
currently
moment,
my
yeah.
wide receiver 28 in Dynasty, so that AP seems a little high. But yeah, I'm hoping he falls in value in the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I've got him wide receiver 29, just
Yeah,
behind Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, see, I'm not my concerns, and I sent this to Dan. I've just got it here that I'm reading. Like one of Richardson's strengths, like I'm different to a lot of people. Hutch, I actually don't think Anthony Richardson's as much of a project as what many people are thinking. Just listening to guys like Nate Tyson, that on The Athletic, and they're sort of saying, like, you look at his skills, it was a lack of talent was part of the main reason why he struggled. But the thing that I'm more worried about with Michael Pittman is his targets that were either behind the line of scrimmage or up to 19 yards in his 3 seasons that he's played. So in 2020, 89.3% of his targets were either behind the line of scrimmage or 0 to 19 yards. In 2021, it dropped to 84.4%, but last year it was up to 95% of his targets were either behind the line of scrimmage or in the 0 to 19 yard range. So that for me is where I'm a bit cautious on him. Granted, I know that has a lot to do with the personnel that were around him, but I just worry because I think there's a lot of questions on that offense, including the offensive line that will, and like you said, he's got to gel with Anthony Richardson and stuff. So he's just a guy who I'm a little bit worried who's not really going to give you that explosive scoring that you see a lot of these other wide receivers that who can pull that off, like an Ayuk, like a Debo, those types of guys.
Yeah.
So John, who is your first buy that you like?
Okay, I'm going to go with Chris Olave here, and look, it's a tricky one because right now he is ranked wide receiver 8 on Fantasy Pros. I've got him actually ranked wide receiver 9, but even still with that much immense cost, I still think he's like the juice is worth the squeeze. I think he's an immense talent. You could see what he was doing last year with Jameis Winston was actually not too bad over the first couple of weeks. He was still getting going, but even in that week 3 game against Carolina, he put up 9 receptions, 147 yards. Even the week before against Tampa Bay, 5 receptions, 80 yards in his second game. Like, it wasn't bad. He did deal with a few injuries and the concussion that he sustained through the season. But even with Andy Dalton, he was doing really, really amazing things in his first year. Didn't have a huge amount of competition around him, but I think, maybe this is even more of a Derek Carr take than it is a Chris Olave take, but I'm quite high on Derek Carr this year. I think he's kind of almost one of the most perfect quarterbacks from what you could get that the Saints could have got to bring into New Orleans and support those wide receivers. If you think about the deep balls that Derek Carr was throwing to Devonta Adams last year, not that I'm comparing Devonta Adams and Chris Olave, but you can see that the air yards are there for Chris Olave to go up and get if he wants them. And his ability, like his yards after the catch and downfield, was fantastic last season. And that's in his first season. We know that rookies who perform well in their first year, they go on in their second year to do really, really well. And for me, even though it's going to cost you a lot, I'm currently trying to send my 106 pick or 107 pick for him because, I mean, if he was in this year's draft, he'd be right there with Jackson Smith-Njigba. He might. It's hard to say. Hutch, would you have Chris Olave ahead of Jackson Smith-Njigba if he'd gone in this draft as opposed to last year?
Chris Olave, as long as I remember correctly, he was the top 2 receiver for me in that class.
Yeah.
I think I actually had him ranked above Garrett Wilson. I think Traylon Burks and Chris Olave were my top 2 receivers in that class.
And he was drafted wide receiver 10? He was the 10th pick off the board or 11th pick off the board?
I think no.
12.
He was 12. I think the Lions traded up to 11 to get Jameson Williams, and then the Saints were 12 and they selected Olave. Yeah, I think it was 12.
Even though it's wild to think he was like the 4th receiver off the board there, but still just amazing, equally as talented as the other ones who went there.
Yeah, he was 11th. He was 11th, actually.
Yeah,
Jameson Williams is a different class.
Yeah, I saw you checking that as well when you said Jameson Williams. So
wrong class. Yeah, wrong class. Yeah, he was. Yeah, because Jameson Williams was 2022. Chris Olave was, or no, was he 2020? What? Well,
I think we're all getting confused here. I'm sure it was Jameson Williams. It was
No, so
no, Chris Olave
Drake
was drafted
London
11th
went
overall. I
first.
know that. It was just told me Chris Olave was
Yeah.
11th overall.
yeah.
So Drake London went first of the
Yep.
receivers. Then Garrett Wilson went at
Yep.
10. Then Olave
Congrats.
went 11,
11
and
and-
Jameson went 12.
Oh no, Williams
Yeah.
did. Okay, yeah. He went
Yeah.
12. Okay, so it was James.
I think because in my brain I'm taking his
So-
suspension and I'm putting it last year, and then I'm putting his whole miss sort of, or like most
Yes,
of
the
his rookie
missed
season, the
season
year
is
before that,
confusing,
yeah, getting chopped and changed. Okay, so
'Cause
that's it
then
for me.
that's when,
It's I haven't. Yeah, I don't want to harp too much about it, but I think Chris Olave. Like I was really high on Garrett Wilson before. I'm starting to sort of cool a little bit on that, and I'm starting to sort of build some steam momentum for Olave. I think that makes a really nice stack with
Nice.
Derek
So-
Carr. Sorry,
Oh yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah, especially in your best ball sort of tournaments, they'd be the best ball dynasties and things like that. They'd be a good pairing together. So, Hutch, have you got another guy that you're trying to buy in Dynasty at the moment?
I do have another guy I'm trying to buy in Dynasty. Another one I want to buy. I am actually really looking forward to Jahmyr Gibbs, another rookie, when he's going to be able to do. I mean, he is like for redraft this year for Dynasty. He's kind of my guy. Like I'm kind of set in on Jahmyr Gibbs to be a stud fantasy football player. Right now, Jahmyr Gibbs is ranked. I want to put him in my top 3 so badly, but right now he's currently sitting at RB4 for me in my Dynasty rankings, and I just can't move above Taylor Hall. I just can't do it, or Bijan. I don't think I can just do that yet. But seriously, though, Jahmyr Gibbs is set up for so much success in Detroit. I don't understand why people doubt him at this point, because I know he weighed 199 pounds. That wasn't fun. But he got drafted 12th overall. That eliminates all worries for him. It clearly shows that the Lions believe in him, but not just the Lions. The Lions felt they had to make that pick. They had to pick at 18. If they would have thought, we can wait. The NFL doesn't seem very high on Jahmyr Gibbs. They wouldn't have taken him, or at least they shouldn't have. That wouldn't have been the smart move. But they felt they had to take him at 12 in order to get him, which means that there were some other NFL teams that were going after him as well. Jahmyr Gibbs was a very highly touted player, and he comes to this offense that really needs pass catchers. Outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown, it is a lot of concerns. I mean, you have Sam Laporta, who they drafted, but he's a rookie. Rookie tight ends very rarely do anything relevant. Jameson Williams did nothing last year off that ACL tear, and now he's suspended 6 games. Jahmyr Gibbs, we know, is an elite pass catching back. If he can get, like, I don't know, he doesn't even have to do much in the running game. If he can get 100 carries, he can still be an RB1 in fantasy because his receiving profile is just absolutely ludicrous. I could realistically see him breaking 80, 85 receptions this year. That's absolutely an outcome. That's absolutely in his range of outcomes this year. I think he could have like an early Alvin Kamara start to his career, and that would be insane for fantasy. So I'm super excited for him. I think his current cost is just a little bit. People are getting high on him. I mean, he's around the RB 6-7 range. Like people are pretty high on him for Dynasty. So you are gonna have to pay up for him. And usually the people who have him in your league really like him and do not want to give him up. So it's tough to trade for him right now, but I'm still willing to give up a lot to get him.
So can I give you what might be considered a hot take, Hutch? Who are your top 4 Dynasty running backs?
It's Bijan, Hall, Taylor, and Gibbs, and I want to move Gibbs up. I want to move him to 2. I really do, but I love Breece Hall, and Jonathan Taylor's just done too much in the NFL. I want to, though. I really have been tempted. But you have him as your RB2.
I don't have I wouldn't have Jonathan Taylor in my top 5.
Oh wow. Okay.
So I just think with Anthony Richardson coming in, that's going to take away some of the value and the carries and the touches for Jonathan Taylor. So
you could, yeah, that's a solid argument to make.
That's me. But Dan, any thoughts on Hutch's pick there, or any comments?
I love Jahmyr Gibbs, and like we were saying, there's a lot of volume to be had in that Lions offense. So, and like we said, behind Amon-Ra St. Brown, there's not a lot other than Jahmyr Gibbs. So he's, like Hutch said, he's going to be well within reason to have 100 targets in his rookie year. And then, like we said, any rushing upside you get out of him, you're laughing with the receiving upside there. So if you can get him, go after him big time.
I think
John,
that's a great
what were
call.
your
I'm
thoughts
also
on
really
Gibbs?
high on Jameer Gibbs as well. I've got him in Dynasty right now as running back 5. I have him. I would also like to have him higher. I've got Christian McCaffrey up in my top 5 as well. I've also got Travis Etienne at number 4. We won't rehash that. We talked about that one.
Etienne.
We
I'm a
had
big
some
Etienne
discussion on
believer.
this one.
Jeez.
Yeah, you can go back and listen to the pod last week. I spent about 10 minutes making my case, so I won't bring it up again. But I think he's going to be great. I think Jameer Gibbs is going to be great as well. And I think what a lot of people have been doing at the moment is creating this David Montgomery problem for him as well. And I think that that's a real problem to have as well. David Montgomery, he was a great player in Chicago, and he's going to be a great player for the Lions. And I think that it's very sort of chop and change what the Lions have done. They've brought in Jimmy Gibbs and David Montgomery in replacement for exactly, I think it's like a 1-to-1 for DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. But the main difference is the contract that they've given David Montgomery this year, the cap number is $2.8 million with a base salary of $1.25 million. Like that doesn't scare me. That doesn't worry me. I'm aware that like all rookies take a little bit to get started and get going. But you know what does scare me? Pick number 12 overall draft capital. Like that says a lot. And assuming that he sticks around on the Detroit Lions, I think he's going to get an incredible contract.
Especially on a running back.
Salary. Exactly, especially on a running back.
12th overall on a running back, like it's ludicrous now. Like
exactly.
Apparently they were comfortable taking him at 6. Because they had the 6th pick for a while, but they gave it away. But there was reports saying that they were comfortable taking him at 6, but then you didn't get him at 12, which is
it's so hard to say because it's like I saw the other report was that they were going to take him over Bijan Robinson, even if Bijan was still there as well. Or so who knows? But no, I think Gibbs is in a really great spot. Also trying to acquire him. I've got in my personal home dynasty league, I've got 4 first-round picks, and I'm trying to get him with one of them. So we'll see. But again, we're talking about buys, and it's like, what am I willing to give up to get him? I think I've given up plenty already, but we'll see. We'll see. It's a great call.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Gibbs. I said it when we did the draft show. The three of us, Hutch, we did a watch along with the draft, and at the time I was quite high on Jameer Gibbs. I probably wouldn't have picked him with the 12th pick, but then later on I heard there was reports that New England were possibly looking at him at 15, so or 16, wherever New England would be 16. I think it wasn't New England were picking. So like you said, got to take him if you're not sure that he's actually going to make it to 18. Then pay up for him. So, Dan, who's your next buy?
I'll go a bit deeper on this one, and it's always tough trying to think what you're going to get out of tight ends. But for a tight end that I'd target Greg Dulcich out of Denver there. I think with Sean Payton coming on board, we'll see a completely new offense there. And what we saw last year out of Russell Wilson, that was about as bad as you'll see from him. I don't think he'll be that bad again this year, especially with Sean Payton coming in. And then you've got Sean Payton talking about Dulcich being their joker in the offense, so they're going to look to move him all over the place. And he played 10 games last year. He had 55 targets in those games. So they're already targeting him as it is. So if they're moving him all over the place and looking to get him the ball, as a tight end, he's still being drafted, I think, outside tight end 12 sort of range. So I think the upside on him is massive, and he could jump up to that top 6 tight end this year.
What are your thoughts?
Dulcich absolutely has that potential. I mean, we saw it last year. The athletic ability there is really, really something that you got to keep an eye on. When you look at the tight end position, you want to keep an eye on athletes, guys who can make something with their targets and not just like receive them. You have guys like Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, like all the difference makers in fantasy football at tight end. Unless they're getting an insane amount of volume, they're athletes. They're guys that are making yards after the catch. They're guys that are making people miss. They're guys that are running around the field doing things all over the place. Those are the tight ends you want to target. Those are the guys you want to get in on. And Greg Dulcich is absolutely one of those players. He can stretch the field. We saw a few examples last year where he was getting some big time targets down the field. He's a red zone monster. This dude is going to be, he is a really, really good tight end. And this offense, I mean, I don't know what's happened, but Courtland Sutton has just seemed to fall out of it. Like he just kind of like seemed to fall out of it. If Greg Dulcich can step up, I mean, the number 2 receiver behind Jerry Jeudy, there is plenty of upside for him to get into that top 6 range if Russell Wilson really takes a step forward. So yeah, definitely, I'm definitely in on Greg Dulcich with you. I like that pick a lot.
Yeah, I love it. And when you think about Russell Wilson, like whether it's been Jimmy Graham over the years, or even like Jacob Hollister we've had as well come through and come and go. And compared to who he's had now, he's always used the tight ends really well. And they've always sort of never been really like those high octane, like top tier premium players, but they've always managed to stay relevant. And I had Dolce on my fantasy team, and he was really, really, really solid as well through that first season. And you can see like there's a massive step in production. You would think sort of in the 3, 4, 5 year range, but even just that step forward into year 2 is always really solid. I think Sean Payton as well knows how to use his tight ends really well. Also had Jimmy Graham over the years. So maybe there is something there. Maybe there's a little bit of Jimmy Graham 2.0 between the two.
And he's also come out and said he wants to use him as their version of Taysom Hill. So, he's just going to get a lot of touches and, just in all different weird sorts of ways. So there's your touchdown potential for those.
Is he fast, physical kind of guy? Dolcich?
That is a good question.
I guess we'll wait and see.
Something that I'm trying to see if I can find his stats. He ran a 4.70 40-yard dash.
Yeah, he's an athletic tight end. He's a guy who can stretch the field.
And he's 6'4", 245 or something as well. So
yeah,
for that sort of size with that sort of like athleticism, then yeah, they'll be able to do good things with him if they use him well.
Sounds good. I just traded him away for a second round pick. So maybe I'm going to a bit of buyer's remorse there. All right, I'm going to jump in with my second buy. So my second buy is Kadarius Toney. Predominantly at the moment for the draft capital reason on Fantasy Pros in Dynasty rankings, he's going as wide receiver 44. I think that not only is he like a supreme talent when he plays, which has sort of always been a bit of an issue there, but he's playing on obviously one of the best offenses that we've seen in a really long, long time. With Patrick Mahomes, he's got Andy Reid, he's got all the pieces. His competition is Sky Moore. Who else am I forgetting on the Chiefs right now? Outside of Travis Kelce, of course.
Scantling.
Yeah, MVS, who I think that they might also have a bit of buyer's remorse on that one, bringing that one in. But they did actively go out and get Kadarius Toney and bring him in. Honestly, like one of my other ones that I'm maybe concerned about, maybe I don't need to be, is Justin Ross, if he can actually do anything, because he was an amazing talent at Clemson.
They drafted Rashee Rice as well.
And they drafted Rashee Rice, exactly. So, I mean, we haven't really said any names there that concern me. This is Kadarius Toney is was he a third-year player? If I recall correctly.
Yes.
Yeah. So even though he hasn't put up those elite numbers, but we've seen him in games, when he was with the Giants playing against the Cowboys. He is one of those players who can pop off. I think there was that joke that even in the Super Bowl, he had like less than 10% of snaps and still managed to nearly score 2 touchdowns. So for someone who can really break the game wide open at wide receiver 44, I think he's worth going out and getting. If I have a quick look, the receivers around him, just above him is Elijah Moore, Mike Evans, and Keenan Allen. I think I'd rather him over all of those in Dynasty. And below him is Tyler Lockett, Gabe Davis, Marvin Mims, Courtland Sutton. Like, I don't think that he needs to be in that sort of range of names that I'm mentioning.
Yeah, you're.
So the issue
your
for
joke
me
that
with
you were
any
saying.
Chiefs,
So I was
yeah,
just
you
going to
go.
say that joke you were saying, John, was from the Ringer Fantasy Football Show. Danny Heifetz had a bet with
Yeah.
Craig Hallback, and Danny said that Kadarius Toney wouldn't play 5 snaps, and then Craig said that Kadarius Toney would have 2 touchdowns, and they were both nearly right. If if Tony had got that punt return, sort of, that would have sealed the bet. But yeah, what were you saying about Tony, Dan?
Just the thing that scares me the most with any Chiefs wide receiver is as long as they've got Travis Kelce there, it's hard to see the wide receivers that are going to pop out for them. You think with the offense that they run, any wide receiver on that offense that's going to get any sort of target share, you'll be all over. But as long as Travis Kelce's there, he just demands so much ball. So it's hard to see the wide receivers that are going to be worth anything on that roster.
Yeah, and since they lost Travis Kelce, it's just been a carousel of wide receivers. They just don't really use a primary wide receiver in their offense. Since they lost Tyreek Hill, it's just been a carousel of guys. And I'm honestly, that's part of the reason why I actually disagree with this take a little bit with Kadarius Toney. I would personally much rather take the shot on a guy that's with the Chiefs offense. I do think that at the end of the day, we're going to see this. It's going to be oh, this was just a carousel of wide receivers again. Everyone got 600 yards. It's going to be like that again. But if I'm going to take a shot on somebody, I don't want to take the shot on the most expensive player because that's what Kadarius Toney is at this point. He's the most expensive wide receiver on the Chiefs at wide receiver 44 because you have Sky Moore, you have Rashee Rice. Even though I mean, if I had to bet on one wide receiver, I'd probably bet on Kadarius Toney. But I mean, you have guys you have here. Let me look at Fantasy Pros ADP real quick. So Fantasy Pros ADP, this is single quarterback league. Kadarius Toney he's going wide receiver 43 right now in ADP. Right now he's going wide receiver 43. Rashee Rice is going wide receiver 52. Sky Moore 57. And then where the heck even is Justin Ross? He's gone in these rankings.
Yeah, he wouldn't even be there.
Justin Ross. Yeah, wait, hold on. Justin Ross. He is wide receiver 125. I would much rather pay those prices for those guys because they still have all the same potential. Each one of these guys has the potential to be the number one receiver for the Chiefs. I would rather pay the cheaper price personally. So Kadarius Toney is someone that I'm actually not really getting a ton of. Not necessarily because he's awfully priced. It's just that there's cheaper options. I think they have the same upside.
Hutch, do you feel like when you say expensive, though, it's kind of all relative? We're almost talking about wholesale prices here. It's not like we're saying, oh, man, it's going to cost you a first or a second round pick. I don't think it would even cost you that. And I think
he's going to go for seconds. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think the play that I gave up to get him was Rondale Moore or someone like that. I can't actually remember now. But when you think about say you're in a startup draft today, obviously you've got your top tier players, your tier 2, tier 3, and then obviously those tiers start to become bigger and bigger because there's more sort of variance for all players to come in. You could almost make a case that Rashee Rice or Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney could almost be in the same tier. And when you're saying what would you give up to get Kadarius Toney? It might be a mid, maybe an early second round pick. What would you give up to get Sky Moore? It might be a mid second round pick, maybe a late second round pick potentially. So there's not a huge amount of difference there. And I think for the upside of Toney, I reckon that's easily worth a little bit more, just a smidge more investment. But I understand completely what you're saying. It's it could go anywhere. And the Chiefs have been so open over the last couple of years about wanting to spread the ball out more and what life looks like after Tyreek Hill. And we saw it in motion last year, and that was terrifying. So I'm ready to get burned again, though.
Yeah, because the thing is, a lot of people say someone has to, because I've heard a lot of people saying someone has to step up and someone has to be a pure dominant receiver. It doesn't have to be that way at all. Sometimes I get it with these players where people are someone has to step up. It's also if they're not talented enough, they're not going to get the targets they deserve. That's usually how the offense works. So usually, I'm not saying all the time, but usually it's the talented players who are getting the targets. And if you're really talented enough, you're going to earn a high target share. And if you're not, they're going to find somebody to eat up targets from you. That's just how it goes. And if no one really steps up in this Chiefs offense or truly steps up, it's going to be a carousel of frustrating fantasy options again, and you're not going to want a piece of it.
for sure. And we
And
haven't
was it
even got
last
to
year
his.
that Travis Kelce set a career high in targets?
Yeah.
So the more question marks there are in the wide receivers, the more Kelce just gets targeted. So again, it's that funnel towards Travis Kelce. So,
But do you think that that's also because defenses don't really have an answer for Travis Kelce? We see like game week in and week out, he dominates those defenses. Kadarius Toney came in halfway through the season, and maybe they haven't had time to think about how they want to use him more creatively and in different ways, where he can be the one who schematically is a nightmare matchup for most teams, I think.
Potentially.
Well,
Yeah.
it could be that. I think there's a bit of the way that the Chiefs use Travis Kelce is, that they'll motion him out. He'll start in line, he'll motion out wide, and then he'll come back in. And when you look at it from the defensive side, that's changing on the fly. Who's got that guy? So you'll see, the corners will go out and will follow Kelce, and then they'll come in, and just as he's coming in, the ball gets snapped, and then you see the corners are getting confused because they're going, wait, now that Kelsey's coming back in, is he number one or number two? Who's my assignment here? And that's how quite often you can sometimes see, we look at some of these plays and you go, Travis Kelce is the best player on the field, like receiver-wise, like pass catcher-wise. How is he 35 yards in the clear? Like, what's happened? And you go back and you look at it, and it's that motion that's created holes, or the defense has got confused with their assignments because of the motioning in and out, and that's where I think when you've got a guy like Travis Kelce in the team and the play design, and he's able to change on the fly the players' assignments on the fly, and that's where the motion is used to can be used to such great effect for some of these teams. Is right at the snap of the ball, you've got the guy who is supposed to be lining up on Travis Kelce is now going, but he's now outside. He's the outside corners guy. Wait, now who am I going for? And then you have three guys following one player, and the Chiefs end up with 2-3 guys all by themselves.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that'll play ring around the rosy behind the line of scrimmage before they start to run plays. So anything could happen. But I just wanted to lastly mention with Kadarius Toney, because it is a real thing. Like his soft tissue injuries do concern me.
Yes.
And they don't really typically go away. So that is priced in, I guess. But no, I stand by what I said.
Stand behind your convictions. Stand behind it.
Exactly.
So we'll breeze through these. We'll breeze through these quickly. Hutch, have you got a sell that you're a guy that you're looking to sell in Dynasty?
Yeah, a player that I'm looking to sell in Dynasty. I mean, this one might potentially hurt some people. It might potentially make some people upset with me. But I really just don't. I'm really concerned about Travis Etienne. I'm really concerned. I mean, when you said Travis Etienne is RB4 earlier, I was like, Travis Etienne, I'm really, really concerned for. I mean, last year he finishes the RB16 in PPR scoring, and that was with him with pretty much the full-time workload. And he pretty much played every game, right? And he finishes like the RB16 in PPR, and that's in full PPR. That's where he finished last year, right? And now we're looking at Travis Etienne this year. They brought in a third-round running back, Tank Bigsby, and all the reports have shown we don't want to give Travis Etienne the same workload. We don't want to give Travis Etienne that workload. We don't want to give him the full-time workload. We want to involve other backs. That has been all the reports. We know Dougie P can use running back by committee backfields. We've seen him do that a lot in his career as a head coach. And adding on to that, I mean, people want to say, oh, Travis Etienne, he's an amazing receiving back, though. He's going to get it done. God, he didn't catch that many balls last year. I believe if my memory serves correctly, 35 catches last year. But I just want to question, why would those go up this year? There's no reason for that. They added another running back who is a sneaky all right pass catcher. He's not great, but he's okay. They added Calvin Ridley this offense. Why would they go up significantly? There's no reason for them to go up significantly. So I'm not going to bet on that. So I think he's going to simply lose some carries. Maybe he gets a little more efficient. Maybe he stays healthy. But I don't see him getting past like RB12. I just don't see him getting past that range. and he's going in a spot around he's going top 10 in Dynasty, and that's just something that I'm just not interested in. I have him ranked as my RB14, so not significantly lower, but I'm not investing in Travis Etienne at his cost. And for Travis Etienne also, I'm more out on him in a redraft as well, because he's going as a top 12 running back in redraft, and that just kind of like, no. I'm good there. But I know, John, you disagree.
We'll save you. I was going to say, we'll save you, John, if you can condense your argument from last week.
I'm compiling my notes. I was like, what?
Cliff notes.
Yeah. Anyway, what was I saying? As I was saying, no. Okay.
No. So, Dan, I know we spoke about this last week on the Saturday Air Raid show, but your thoughts on Etienne?
Yeah, if you could, when you edit this, if you could just put that Spider-Man meme between Hutch and I, that'd be perfect, because he basically said exactly what I said last week as well. So, yeah, Hutch and I, same page with Etienne.
Love to hear it.
And John, we know your position, John. So,
Hutch doesn't.
Dan, no. Well, like I said, give him the cliff notes as to why.
Yeah, I'll summarize what I was. I think that I see Travis Etienne as this massive post-hype sleeper, and I think that everyone was really excited about him last year because we knew the talent was there and we know what he was going to produce. And a lot of people were let down because I think the hype was so immense. But I think what people are forgetting is that last year was his first year. And we often look at players who are rookies and what stats that they put up through their first sort of season of NFL. It is always a slow start for rookies. We know that. We know over the first 4 games, that's what's going to happen. It's what happened to Travis Etienne. I know he was... I think that the coaching staff has taken into account that he did miss all of his rookie season, and they treated last year as his first season. He was splitting time with James Robinson, who was doing really, really well and had absolutely no reason to lose the job to Travis Etienne, but he did. He got traded away, and Travis Etienne took over, and all of his attempts and opportunities went up from that moment on. It was from about week 4 on, after that Philly game, which was, as you probably remember, was the immense sort of torrential rain, right up until the point where he got injured after the bye against the Ravens. And then he did take a few weeks to come back. But, we talk about his receiving work wasn't good, and it wasn't. All the stats pretty much support that it wasn't. But if you look at the last 4 games of the season, he had 3 targets, 3 targets, 3 targets, and 2 targets. He dropped 1 pass in that final 4 stretch, and he was putting up some really good numbers. One thing that didn't work well for him was his touchdowns. He only scored like 5 touchdowns, was it, for the whole season? Yeah, 5. I think that's going to go up. If we look at the Jags, as everyone's talking about, Trevor Lawrence will take a step forward. They're adding Calvin Ridley. I think Calvin Ridley is an argument for Travis Etienne. The offense is going to get better, and if they're going to create more first downs, they're going to create more opportunities to score. I don't think that Tank Bigsby is a player that I'm particularly worried about, and I was saying this last week mainly because if you look at the game where he got hurt early against the Ravens, it was JaMychal Hasty and Snoop Connor for the rest of the game. And I think the Jags have made an educated decision to say, like, hey, you know what? We're actually not going to roll. If Etienne gets hurt, we're not going to roll with JaMychal Hasty as the guy and Snoop Connor as the backup. We need someone who can come and fulfill that role. I know that people are saying that Tank Bigsby could take away a lot of high-value touches, like inside the 5, inside the 10, because Travis Etienne didn't do a great job last year. But I think that there's so much room for growth. And his, like when he was at Clemson, just the final thing I'll say, when he was at Clemson, he was, putting up these sort of like 5, 6, 7, 8 catch games for 80 to 100 plus yards. He has done in his career, and he was doing it with Trevor Lawrence. And I think that they will find a way to rekindle that. So that's my thing on Travis Etienne.
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid argument.
That was the short version.
That was the short version. Yeah. The only thing I really see with Travis Etienne is the touchdowns and the offense getting better. That is something that's really, really good point, because if Travis Etienne gets in the end zone a few more times, we're looking at him as a different fantasy running back this year. Like if he gets in the end zone more like 10 times, like we're looking at him differently. But I'm with the touchdowns a little bit. I'm more concerned with Tank Bigsby, I think at his size, he could take some goal line work. He could take some of that work, that area of the game, and that's really, really concerning for me personally when you look at Etienne's touchdown upside. But yeah, I think when it boils down to it, I think you and me are just more or less worried about Tank Bigsby. I think that's the big thing for a lot of people out there is Bigsby and how we think it would impact the offense. I'm following the coaching staff, and what they're saying is that he's going to be like that. They want to limit Travis Etienne's workload. That's all they've been saying all offseason long. And sometimes coach speak just isn't true. Sometimes it isn't true. We see all the time, like, players are playing with a third team, and then they come out and have a big breakout year. Like we see players being brought down, and all of a sudden they come out and have a really good season. Like coaching staff doesn't always determine everything. Coach speak doesn't always determine everything because he is the 3rd round pick, and if he just isn't that good, he's not going to get touches. Like that's just how it's going to go. So. Well, I do think Tank Bigsby is going to be involved, and he is set to be a good part of this offense. I do respect the opinion that Travis Etienne is going to maintain a solid workload and get more touchdowns and be a great fantasy back, but I personally don't see it.
Yeah, I think, but so he had 1,400 scrimmage yards in his rookie season. That should go up. It usually does in this instance with 1st-round picks. 5 touchdowns. We're happy to say it will go up. And the other thing is, I just see. Like you remember last off-season, where everyone was concerned about Zamir White coming in and taking away work from Josh Jacobs, and Josh Jacobs was on his way out, and Zamir White is going to be the thing. It's just like I just see Tank Bigsby as another Zamir White sort of situation. He's the same size as Travis Etienne. I know that Travis Etienne is not without his flaws, and I can see that they're there. I think that we always talk about like positive regression, and it should go back to some sort of mean with that much scrimmage yards and that much work. But for some reason with Travis Etienne, everyone was so disappointed with last year. They're letting it get in the way, I think, of this season coming.
I think a big hindrance for Etienne's upside is Doug Peterson himself.
Yeah, and that is as well. Yeah, he's never had a bell cow type workload.
Yeah, he doesn't do that.
Yeah,
he doesn't do that.
Dan, have you got a sell for us?
Okay, so this one's going to be interesting to hear everyone's thoughts on because you can easily buy him as well. Nick Chubb. So he's turning 28 in December. He's probably the best pure running back in the NFL. Kareem Hunt's gone, so he could get an uptick in receiving this year as well. His value is going to hold extremely high during this season. So if you're somebody that's during the season before the trade deadline, if you're not a contender and you can target somebody that is a contender and you've got Nick Chubb on your roster, you can get a good haul back for him still this year. So as much as it's tough to trade him away because of the season I'm expecting him to have, you're going to look to the future and you're going to try and get as many draft picks as possible or as many young players as possible to cover him and trade him away and hopefully set yourself up for a good 2-3 years in advance as well.
I absolutely love this. I think this is a great option. I'm personally in the boat where I'm buying Nick Chubb, though, right now. If I'm a contender, he is set up for so much success this year. He is set up to absolutely smash this year. RB1 overall is absolutely in his range of outcomes this season. If he can find, because here's the thing, I feel like people are concerned on whether the pass catching work is going to go up or not. I think it's pretty much guaranteed that he gets more targets, and here's why. The Browns last year, I mean, they weren't a super high volume passing offense. And then Sean Watson came in and it wasn't really great. But this year they've lost running back depth. Not just Kareem Hunt, but also
Dearness Johnson.
Yeah, Dearness Johnson, sorry. They lost him this offseason as well. All they have is Jerome Ford back there as a potentially relevant running back. That's all they have. They lost running back depth this offseason. They've added wide receivers, which shows us what? And then Deshaun Watson said to take a step as well. That shows us that the Browns want to pass more this year. And if they pass more, no matter if Nick Chubb's target share stays the same or not, he's going to get an increase in targets. It's just how it's going to go. And Chubb doesn't have to be a prolific pass catcher. He can catch 35 balls next year. He can catch 30 to 40 passes next year. If he can catch anything in that range, that is much better than what he's done in years past. And he's going to be significantly better fantasy running back because of it. I see him as a top 5 fantasy running back this year. I think he's going to be fantastic. But I do agree that if you're mid-season and you are not really looking great as a team and you can sell him to a contender, that is such a great option because next season, no one's going to be touching Nick Chubb at age 28. He's not going to be someone that's being touched at all. He's going to be significantly thrown down in the rankings. So I love that take is selling him mid-season. That sounds so good to me.
Nice. John, have you got a sell for us before we finish up?
Before we finish up, maybe this could be more of a group chat because I'm not even sure that I half believe it myself, but can I throw it out there? And Hutch, you might look back on this maybe at the end of the season and be like, who was that lunatic who was saying to sell Justin Fields? I've got this thing in my head about Justin Fields where I think he's going to be fantastic for redraft this year. I think he will be fantastic. And I think if he really plays like future years in redraft, he could be fantastic. I don't think you'll ever get as much value for Justin Fields potentially as now. Like he has to win this year. And I'm not talking about fantasy, I'm talking about real football now. The Bears have to win games. If the Bears don't win games, I think that there's a world in which they could move on from Justin Fields. And look, he could probably go to another team and still be great. I don't think potentially the reason the Bears moved out of the number 1 pick this year is because they looked at all the quarterbacks and said, yeah, I think Justin Fields is potentially better than these quarterbacks and we're happy with him. But I don't think that this staff or regime are particularly tied to him. I think if he is bad this year, there's a world in which they could be like, hey, look, we're still bad. We need to move on. And we could start this whole rookie contract process again because he is going into his 3rd year now, his 4th year now, 3rd year. So, yeah. So, look, and like I have Justin Fields and I love having Justin Fields, but there's a part of me in the back of my mind that goes, is he ever going to be like, could I ever get this much for him ever again? So even though look, I would need to get a lot to move on from him, but the thought is starting to enter my mind of like, what if the Bears are bad this year? What if they're losing games? What if they just decide, look, Justin, you're a great player. You run lots. That's like, and that he's very good for fantasy. I think that there's some players that we just need to be able to separate fantasy and real football. And yeah, I mean, half of it, I don't even know if I believe it myself, but I
actually don't mind this at all. When you said I'm going to say something crazy and you said Justin, I was like, are you going to say sell Justin Jefferson right now? And no, it's Fields. I do respect this a lot, actually. I mean, I've had Fields in my ranks as my quarterback 8 in Dynasty, which is around consensus. Some people have him ranked higher. Some people have him even ranked a little 9 lower.
Yeah.
But QB 8 is pretty consensus for Justin Fields right now. And I totally respect the take that he's not going to be the franchise quarterback for them because he was actually like, if you look back his numbers, he was horrific last year. Like genuinely, he was horrific as a passer last year. He was so bad. He made some highlight plays, but man, he was bad. And the volume was awful. It was really genuinely awful for Justin Fields last year. He really did not look great throwing the football at most times last year. And if he does fail again this year, the Bears are probably going to be really bad because their defense isn't prolific. It's fine. Yeah. They've added some pieces this offseason. They're going to be fine. But if they get any, because I don't remember, because they have their own draft pick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't remember.
And the Panthers as well.
They do have the Panthers. Okay. Yeah. They have the Panthers.
So they're in a position to move up to 1 if the Panthers are bad, which they probably could be.
And they got the Panthers first in that DJ Moore trade. Yeah. They got the Panthers first in that DJ Moore trade. That's how, because the Panthers moved up to number 1 overall through that trade. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's more of just like
they're in a position to get Caleb Williams if they want. So
and look, Justin Fields is supreme talent, and I love him. This is just one of those rare players where it's like, hey guys, we need to remind ourselves that Justin Fields needs to win this year.
He has to. Where you're drafting him, he has to win. Like if he does not show up this year, you're going to be extremely let down by picking him at like number 7 or 8 overall in a startup draft. Like that's brutal. That would be a brutal pick to make if you're a dynasty manager. So yeah, Justin Fields is somebody he's a very risky selection in dynasty. I feel like some people aren't really taking that into consideration. Yeah. Some people like to call him safe because of his running ability, but in dynasty he can get replaced this year like that.
Even if he's not, I just think that like the value is immense right now.
It is so high, yeah. Because if he falls apart next year, like if he really doesn't look good, his value is going to completely diminish, because then the Caleb Williams rumors are going to come in, the trades are going to happen, things are going to get moved around, and then he's done for. It's over. Like, his value right now is so high. He's a player, like, he's just one of those players in Dynasty that everyone wants to have a part of. Like people just want a part of Justin Fields. Like, people are really excited for him. People are really hyped for him. So I don't mind that take at all.
I'm hyped, but I'm consent. But I'm hyped.
Oh yeah, it's exciting. Justin Fields is awesome, and his rushing ability last year alone proved to be amazing. But yeah, he's very worrisome in Dynasty. So I don't mind that take at all.
So I'm a Packers fan.
Dan, have you got any thoughts on Fields?
Yeah, so being a Packers fan, I think the best thing for Justin Fields is to get off the Bears.
Yeah.
So if they do end up trading him away, I can see his value for fantasy skyrocketing still. And he finished as QB7 last year, and he threw 318 passes for the whole season. Well, that's attempts, not completions. That's attempts.
Yeah.
So they bought in DJ Moore, who I'm not high on DJ Moore, but they bought him in to be the number one. He's better than what they've had there in the past. You have to believe Fields' volumes as a passer is going to go up a bit. It's not going to be anything major, but he's going to get that volume as a passer going up. He's still going to run the ball nonstop. And then, like you said, if he doesn't improve on the Bears as a passer, somebody's going to pick him up if they end up moving on from him.
Yeah,
I mean, it's there.
How many times have we seen that ever work out, where someone moves on from their rookie contract and then they do great things on their team?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking as well.
That doesn't happen often. Like, you don't see that often with especially the quarterback position. You just don't see that. Like, that's just something that happens often. So as much as I would love to believe that, it's just that's something that doesn't work out. If a team moves on from a quarterback, especially when they pick so highly, it probably means he's no good. So I would if Justin Fields were to move to another team, I'd kind of be done with him. I would just bet against him. It'd be too easy to bet against him.
If you could, I think if you could get someone like Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert for him, if someone's willing to get that piece, I reckon I would do that.
Yeah, that's a heartbeat move, easily. Yeah. If you can get Burrow, Jackson, Herbert, or Lawrence for Fields, that's an easy smash trade for me. Yeah. And I think, I'll go for it. Sorry.
No. You go, Hutch. You go.
Okay. Yeah. And I was looking at, because I have some quarterbacks that I'm a little higher on in Dynasty too. Like, I'm pretty high on Dak Prescott, actually.
Yes.
I think Dak Prescott's pretty undervalued in Dynasty right now. I mean, he's a little bit older. He's almost 30. But I mean, when he's been on the field healthy, he's shown that he's a really good fantasy quarterback. I think you could straight, like in a Superflex league, I think you can straight Justin Fields for Dak Prescott in 2 firsts.
Yeah.
I think you can get that done. And if you can get that, and those firsts could be early too, and it doesn't matter. Like, those firsts can be anything. Like, they could be early, they could be late, it doesn't matter. If you can get that done, I'd be happy to get that done.
But I think people have been scared of Dak Prescott because of all the interceptions last year. But when you look at it, most of them weren't on him.
Yeah, there were some drops. There were some brutal drops.
Yeah,
last year.
But to Hutch's point, is Dak Prescott is more of just like the side piece. The 2 firsts are sort of like the carrot that you're dangling in front of people, and you're just sort of trying to get Dak Prescott in as that equivalent equivalent piece, but the other person's probably not thinking about it that way as much because they're so just smitten with Justin Fields.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The only thing I'm going to push back on, John, and the rest of you guys, well, there's 2 things. One, the Panthers won't be bad this year. The Panthers will be good. So it's not going to be a high pick. I'm not.
I mean, even if they're even if they're good, right? Even if they're all right, the Bears are probably still good. Because if the Bears are because if Justin Fields breaks out, we're not even looking at a situation where they trade up for a quarterback. But if they're bad next year and they have a top 10-ish pick, something around there,
top 10 pick,
and they have the Carolina Panthers, maybe they have the 20th pick next year. If you have the 10th and 20th pick, you have the power, and you have 25 firsts you can use. You have seconds and thirds you can use. If the Bears are a bad team next year, they will have the power to trade into the top 5, and that will be enough to get them Caleb Williams or Drake May or whoever they want.
Yeah, and that's it. Who are you taking in a dynasty startup? Is it Justin Fields or is it the 24-101? Which Caleb Williams? I think I'd take Caleb Williams.
That's interesting. I mean,
the other
the thing is,
the other
the thing is that
thing-
when you trade for a first, there's no guarantee you get the 1-on-1, so you can't realistically do
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
but
yeah. Of course.
yeah, it's
of course.
tough. It's tough.
the only other thing that I think, and part of the reason why they moved back, like the Bears were not a good roster last year. Like, so their starting offensive line last year was a 5th round rookie in Braxton Jones, who held up pretty well. Cody Whitehair was playing guard. Lucas Patrick was center. Tevin Jenkins was playing right guard, and Riley Reif was their right tackle. So this draft was really, they brought in Nate Davis as another guard. They're moving Tevin Jenkins over to left guard. You've got Cody Whitehair, who's played center, to go with Lucas Patrick. And now you've got Darnell Wright, the rookie out of Tennessee, to play right tackle. So I think that might, to me, the lack of receiving options plus the offensive line that the Bears had last year is probably what didn't help Justin Fields with his passing. Like, if you saw so much, he had to tuck the ball and run so much because, they'd snap the ball and it seemed like the defenders were in the backfield as soon as the ball was snapped. So it was like a turnstile. Those some of those games, watching the edge rushes, it was just going through unabated half the time. So I think with the improved offensive line and adding a guy like DJ Moore into the team will help. To me, I think it'll help Justin Fields throwing this season.
100%.
So,
and not to be confused, like, this is not I'm not an anti-Justin Fields guy. This is just
no, but I get
a
where
group
it is.
discussion of thoughts in the back of
Absolutely.
my mind. My mind.
Yeah, it's something you totally got to keep in mind. Like, his job is not guaranteed.
Yeah.
It is very much at risk right now. And when I see people like taking Justin Fields over Justin Herbert, over Lamar Jackson, over Trevor Lawrence, I just lose it because they're guaranteed, especially in a 1-quarterback league. I kind of understand it because in a 1-quarterback league in Dynasty, you want to shoot for more upside because the quarterback position is more replaceable in a 1-quarterback league. But in a super flex league, like, you're taking Justin Fields, a guy who could be replaced next year like that, over guys that are guaranteed franchise quarterbacks. Like, that's just ludicrous to me.
Give me Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson any day. I think that combo is nice.
100%. Yeah, like,
okay,
insane.
That's it.
I've got one final question as we're heading out, and it's just a quick answer from everyone. Who would you rather in Dynasty, Justin Fields or Trey Lance?
Justin Fields.
Justin Fields.
Yeah. Is this a trick question? Is this a bit?
No.
Justin Fields?
It's literally because I was trying to find who it was. I saw an argument on Twitter today to say that if Trey Lance was playing as of right now, he steps out. If he was on the Chicago Bears right now, Trey Lance would have better fantasy stats than what Justin Fields would. That was an actual argument I saw on Twitter. Yeah.
It's hard to say. It's like, I want to say no. Because we haven't seen Trey Lance do anything. And there's a big stench around Trey Lance right now because he just hasn't done anything yet. And he was the 3rd overall pick. It's really, really been a bad start to his career for him. But it's also just hard to say flat no because we haven't really seen Trey Lance play. We've seen him play like 2 games in the NFL so far. And then he broke his ankle. Like, we haven't seen him play in the NFL. So it's really, really hard to say that no, Trey Lance wouldn't, guaranteed he would not have better stats. But it's also hard to argue that he would because the 49ers didn't start him for a full season for a reason.
Yeah.
And they have said that Brock Purdy is going to start if he's healthy for a reason. They're the only team that have really seen Trey Lance. They're the only team that have watched him play enough. They're the only team that have seen him in practice. They're the only team. And everything that they've done around him has shown that they do not believe in him at all. They try to trade him away. They're saying Brock Purdy's going to start over him. Jimmy Garoppolo started over him in his rookie season for a full year. They started Jimmy Garoppolo over the 3rd overall pick, the guy they traded multiple firsts to get. And I saw a recent tweet. It was like the 3 firsts they gave were part of the Tyreek Hill trade. The other first was Jalen Waddle, and the other first was Bradley Chubb. Like, they traded everything to get Trey Lance. And it's just they seem so willing to move on. There's a reason for that. So I would say I'd bet on Justin Fields scoring more fantasy points in the Bears last year than Trey Lance would have. But there, you can't guarantee anything because we just haven't seen Trey Lance play.
I was still in on Trey Lance just because of that draft capital until you heard stories that Sam Darnold was ahead of him as well.
Sam Darnold, yeah.
So that was it for me. I'm out completely on Trey Lance now.
I was out when I heard that Tom Brady threw more passes last season in the NFL than Trey Lance had in high school, college, and the NFL combined.
Wow.
So that's a real stat.
brutal.
Tom Brady threw
That's
more passes last year than
brutal.
Trey Lance has his
Yeah.
entire career. So
Wow. That is brutal.
On that-
Oh,
on that
goodness.
note, I want to say thank you very much, Hutch, for coming on the show and chatting it up with us. Can you let everyone know where they can find any of your work that's coming out?
Oh, sure. Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate it. Anyone listening, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at HutchinsonB_FF. On Twitter, I do work with Football Guys, with Dynasty League Football. And me and this kid I know, I'm sure you guys know him, Luke Sawhook. You guys know who Luke is? Me and him, Luke is amazing. If you don't follow him on Twitter, he's at Luke Sawhook. You should go follow him. He's awesome. But me and him have a big project in the podcast game coming out soon. So we're hoping to announce that within the next couple of days. Well, actually, I don't know when this podcast will actually post, but within the next couple of days, we're hoping to announce it. It'll be very, very fun. So yeah, me and Luke are working on a big project. And then I've also got a Patreon. If you check out patreon.com/clutchhutch, you can check that out. We've got a couple tiers over there if you want to do that. But that's pretty much it. I'm all over the place in the fantasy football community, and I'm always making content on Twitter, and I'm all over the place. I'm doing stuff everywhere.
Awesome, man. Fantastic. As you should be as well. It's fantastic to finally speak to you.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate it. It was nice speaking to you guys.
I was excited to get you on, man. I was looking forward to this.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man.
John, Dan. John, Dan, thank you for coming on, and we'll chat with everyone next time. So until then,